So today I'm going to be talking about Franklin D. Roosevelt's fourth inaugural address and what he was politically advocating for. A little background on FDR. He was president for the United States for 4 terms, and he gave obviously 4 inaugural addresses, and his last one that I'm covering was his shortest inaugural address because he was sick. And in recent events that he had given this speech was World War II, so his speech was kind of made around the recent events of World War II. So on the agenda today, some of the points that he covered or politically advocating for was peace, learning to trust, allies, and people fighting for the nation. So peace. He advocates for there to be this peace, and the only way to get to this peace would be winning the war and having this total victory. He mentions in his inaugural address, "In the days and the years that are to come, we shall work for a just and honorable peace, a durable peace, as today we work and fight for a total victory in war." So again, he is trying to really advocate that we're able to have this honorable peace if we're able to work towards it with this victory. And the victory he's referring to is D-Day. So during World War II was the Battle of Normandy. It caused West Europe to be taken over by the Nazis. They had planned D-Day in order to get these territories back, and they had plans with allies, and the allies were going to fight, well, did fight Germany in order to get back these territories. America was super close to victory, and they knew that winning would end the war and kind of just give peace for everyone, which would be what they're talking about when they say total victory in war. So another main point in his inaugural address was learning to trust, and he's kind of just telling America, hey, we need to learn how to trust other nations. He mentions in his inaugural address, "We gain no lasting peace if we approach it with suspicion and mistrust, or with fear." So he's saying that America needs to learn that we will not going to get anywhere with peace if we're too scared or not willing to trust another nation, which is why fear and mistrust is kind of a key point. If we're able to have open minds and understand that nations are going to do things the other way, and just if there's an open mind instead of just thinking it's just they're suspicious, we're going to have some peace knowing that another nation is going to be on our side. But that's obviously not going to be possible with this fear, mistrust, and just not understanding that there's other possibilities. He also mentions in his inaugural address, "We have learned that we cannot live alone at peace, that our well-being is dependent on the well-being of other nations." So he's talking about this because many Americans believe that we can live as a nation independently and we're not going to need other nations. But the truth is, for us to be a great nation, we have to rely on other nations. And he expresses that it's just not possible, and it's important that we work together for this peace, because it's just not going to happen without other nations and having this peace. He also says in his inaugural address, "We have learned that we must live as men and not as ostriches nor as dogs in the manger." So he's kind of just saying, we're not animals, we need to learn how to be civil. So he advocates for allies because they're really essential to winning this war, and the allies kind of just stemmed from learning how to trust, because we're not going to have these allies unless we learn how to trust, and we're not going to have peace without these allies, because without them we're not going to win this war, or we weren't going to win the war. He, at the very beginning of his inaugural address, mentions them. He says, "We Americans of today, together with our allies." So he acknowledges the allies because they weren't going to be able to have been successful without these allies, and he mentions it because of the recent events of D-Day or Normandy landings. But with these allies, he mentions in his inaugural address, "We have learned the simple truth. As Emerson said, that the only way to have a friend is to be one." So he's quoting this because it's almost like the quote, treat someone how you want to be treated. So if we want allies, then we ourselves must be allies to them as well. Because if we want someone to help us, then we have to be able to also provide that, because they're not going to just provide their help unless we're in agreement of being allies. So fight for the nation. He kind of just talks about and tries to advocate for citizens to fight for our nation because they had recently gone through some unfortunate events. He quotes his old schoolmaster, Dr. Peabody. He says, "Things in life will not always run smoothly. Sometimes we'll be rising towards the heights and all will seem to reverse itself downward. And the great fact to remember is that this trend of civilization is forever upward." So he's giving this quote and to give hope and to possibly raise morale in the nation, because they had recently gotten out of a economic depression through 1929 to 1939. And then in 1939, Hitler decides to invade Poland. And so that starts World War II. And so they had recently got out of this economic depression. So it seems like the whole world is just kind of spiraling and just getting into this hole. It's just deeper and deeper. And he's just trying to encourage the nation that, hey, everything's going to be alright. And we just need to keep being strong. And he just wants to remind everyone that it's only up from here. And at the very end of his speech, he leaves off and he says, the Almighty God has blessed our land in many ways. He has given our people stout hearts and strong arms. So he believes that God has given these people these things and believes that they can fight and that everyone in the nation is really strong and that it's important that we stay strong. And it's just kind of something to raise morale again and to remind people, hey, it's going to be alright. We're going to get through this. Just keep being strong. And then this is my works cited for the presentation.